France 24. Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. This is the France 24 debate. We're wondering if there's another orange revolution on the way in Ukraine. As the protests continue after the government there survived a no-confidence vote. This all to do with the about-face by which Kiev pulled out of at the last minute of a treaty that would have meant closer ties with Brussels. Here to talk about it from the EU headquarters in Brussels, Iryna SKLIAR of the European Center for a Modern Ukraine. Here in the studio, Shevchenko of the activist group FEMEN. With us as well is Thorniké, GORDADZE, Georgia's former Minister for European Integration, who is now teaching at the French Political Science Institute, Sciences Po, and journalist Julian, NUNDY, who was there to cover the Orange Revolution back in 2004. One of the questions that people have been asking is what should the president do when Shevchenko, when protesters say they want Yanukovych to go? What do they want? How to go? How?
Well, what do you expect me to answer? He has to go, definitely, because here is right now I cannot really I'm personally, as a Ukrainian, as one of those protesters as well, as one of those who are growing, watching Orange Revolution, I'm a little bit irritated when people are ignoring 500,000 people who are in the square and thinking how this government has to change their policy.
But in a democracy, there are rules, right?
Years.
You would need. His government's just survived a vote of no confidence.
Yes, but
there are elections scheduled in 2015.
Exactly, but it doesn't mean that people are leaving, right? It doesn't mean that the nation is satisfied with that. The government is satisfied, definitely, but not the nation.
So if he doesn't resign, what do you do?
Well, what people will do, they will not go, I believe. And right now they are showing a sign they will not go because they have a clear demand. This is what, again, I will repeat, that I want everyone to recognize this protest as not a protest for Euro integration. This is one of the reasons to go outside. This is the revolution that people are making, they are reacting on all the oppression that was done during those years after Orange Revolution. People collected all that, and right now it's exploding, and they're coming out, and they're saying, we don't want influence of Russia anymore, we don't want gas blackmailing anymore, we want something new, we want new Ukrainian dream, and they're coming for European integration. But this is again one of the detonators of those revolutions. But revolution is done with much bigger reasons than that.
Iryna SKLIAR, in Brussels, where you are right now, there's a NATO Council meeting going on, and the U.S. Secretary of State has just urged the Ukrainian government to listen to the voices of its people. Do you think that that Yanukovych should step down as a result of all of the people that are here in greater numbers, say some of the panelists, than in 2004?
Well, I think basically to step down or to resign the government, it's not a solution that Ukraine needs. The solution Ukraine needs is now to get around the table, all political forces, people coming back. People actually got to the streets, not for the government, against the government, not for Yanukovych against. People got to the streets for the European integration, and Ina previously said. And people for Euro integration imply the association agreement and visa-free dialogue. For that to happen, all political forces in the Rada have to get back to the Rada and start voting for the necessary laws. The president has to enact them, then they have to be implemented, and then we get one step closer to the EU. So if the president resigns, or if the government resigns, we go deeper and deeper in political crisis, which is not the solution, and which is not the people really want. They want to live in a stable country with European and democratic values. That's what they want.
Before flying off to China, Ukraine's president warned again that, quote, a bad peace is better than the best of wars.
Я считаю, что любая радикализация
I think any radicalization of the political process will only have negative consequences.
приведет только к негативным последствиям.
And using rallies with the aim of radicalization is always a mistake, and someone must always carry political responsibility.
Всегда ошибочно. За это кто-то должен нести ответственность.
Now, in an editorial this Tuesday in the Washington Post warned protesters, be careful of what you wish for, Julian NUNDY. It said if Mr. Yanukovych is forced from power by street marches or other extra-constitutional means, Ukraine will be vulnerable to the endless turmoil that has afflicted other nations that removed elected leaders, including Thailand and Egypt.
Well, this is true. This is obviously a good point, and there's no constitutional or legal reason why Yanukovych should step down, why he should hold new elections. He's got new elections himself coming up in early 2015, which will be the next occasion for the people to choose. On the other hand, the correspondent in Brussels there was saying that it's time to bring together all the political forces. This is rather difficult to do because we must remember that the head of one of the main opposition party is in prison, Yulia Tymoshenko. The head of the second opposition party, Vitaly Klitchko, the world heavyweight boxing champion, he's under pressure because of he's had residence in Germany, and the government is trying to push through a law to stop him being a presidential candidate because of him having German residence. So it's very difficult for these political forces to get together when the government party and the government itself is being so hard on the opposition.
All right, the name of Vitali Klitschko, by the way, came up this morning in conversation. The French foreign minister pressed on the matter by sister station Radio France International. And Laurent Fabius, regarding those protests, saying, no, it's not a coup in the making. Fabius trying to play an even hand up to a point.
There is no antagonism and there is no opposition to having an association with the European Union and also being close to Russia. There is no contradiction. Therefore, it is up to the population and the authorities to choose. But I repeat that the direction taken is extremely shocking. For my part, I told Mr. Klitschko, one of the leaders of the opposition, that I was completely ready to receive him in Paris.
Iryna, SKLIAR, your reaction to that statement by Laurent Fabius?
Well, that's this is a point I already made, basically, that the only solution to me is to sit around the table. I think the European leaders should also be aware, and maybe also to pass this message to the opposition leaders when they receive them in Paris, in Berlin, or whatever, that if Ukraine and the European Union wants to see stable Ukraine and prospering Ukraine, there need to be consensus found, because the people, the interests of the people should not be instrumentalized, neither by the government nor by the opposition. So the only solution is just really to get around the table and to discuss how to pass for European integration law, how to make them implemented, and how finally to sign the accession agreement. Again, the government said it was postponed, so now we would like to see when the conditions are created so it could be signed, actually. And then I think the people will be more or less satisfied. Then the presidential elections are coming, and those who are against, they would just vote against.
Iryna, SKLIAR, you heard there, on the one hand, the French foreign minister was saying, yes, Ukraine can be friends with everybody, both the East and West. But on the other hand, he was saying, let's roll out the red carpet for Vitali Klitschko. What do you think of that?
Well, Vitali Klitschko is one of the potential presidential candidates. So I would not comment further on it. We are going to see how the situation is going to develop. Nevertheless, we still have to remember that so far the president in Ukraine is Viktor Yanukovych. He was democratically elected, and that's it.
Right. Vitali Klitschko is certainly one of the new wrinkles in Ukrainian politics. He's the leader of a party aptly called Punch.
Amid the protests, one man towers above the crowd. Vitali Klitschko, 2 meters tall and weighing 104 kilos, is making his presence felt in Ukraine. Having helped defuse the standoff between anti-government protesters and the police at the weekend, the 42-year-old boxer is increasingly flexing his muscle in the political arena. As leader of the pro-EU opposition party UDA, he's called on President Viktor Yanukovych to resign. A celebrity in his country, Klitschko's a reigning heavyweight world champion. His record speaks for itself. 45 wins, including 41 knockouts and just 2 losses. Now he's eyeing his next victims.
the people don't trust anymore the government, don't trust anymore the president. We see how many hundreds of thousands people come on the street to say, we don't believe the government, we don't believe the president, we want to live in a European country.
After years of fighting in the ring, Klitschko, nicknamed Dr. Iron Fist, entered parliament in 2012, campaigning against corruption. With fisticuffs between quarrelling politicians not uncommon, he's been made to feel right at home. As the protests gather steam, Klitschko's emerged as one of the most popular opposition leaders in Ukraine. He's already announced his intention to run for president in 2015.
And the polls would have him beating the incumbent in a runoff. Vitali Klitschko, he's not been tainted by scandal. Is he the next president of Ukraine? Would you like that to be the case?
Well, definitely he's a champion in box. But I doubt he will be a champion in Ukrainian political changes. And he's definitely a boxer, but not a politician. I think that he's playing a good role right now as an opposition, as a person who is coming to the people and supporting them. But the problem of Ukraine is that for 22 years in the government, in opposition, we have nearly same people, or at least people who are connected with the same interests. And those interests didn't change radically during those 22 years. And I'm fearing, honestly, that Ukrainian revolution can turn with a kind of scenario of Arab Spring, or for example, Taksim Square in Turkey. I'm fearing because of opposition who is a good opposition for the moment, but who cannot become at some point a new government, or who cannot present a new president. Because one, as we were noticing here, there is Nationalist Party who are they're clearly fascist, let's say, and it would be a tragedy if it would turn like that. From the other point, there is Vitaly Klitschko. Me personally, I would not call him politician, not at all.
Why is that?
Well, like during this period of him being part of the Ukrainian Verkhovna Rada, we saw a boxer champion, but not a politician. I repeat again.
So you think that he simply doesn't have the experience to be a political leader?
Well, I simply say that this is, if he is a politician, he would be a weak politician to take the country that is coming right now from a very deep economical, cultural, social crisis, and to put it back or to put it on the step up.
Your thoughts on this?
I wanted to react on another thing, but why not? I've listened to Mr. Klitschko several times in last 2 years, and I have you are quite tough on him. He's really improving, and he made a lot of progress as a politician. And of course, I cannot say if he will be the next president of Ukraine, but I agree with you. There is a problem in Ukraine because since the Orange Revolution, lots of things. The difference with Rose Revolution in Georgia was that a lot of things were not done in Ukraine, and that's why people are disappointed in mainstream political forces. And these things are very painful. I understand why today Ukraine is so vulnerable towards Russia, because the reforms were not made. So Ukraine is still very dependent on Russia, and even a state model or a development model is not very different from Russian model, because this post-Soviet system was not dismantled. And this is, of course, very difficult to dismantle, and you are losing lots of things when you're doing that. You're even losing elections. What happened to my government recently? But this is something to be done, and this was not done in Ukraine. And I understand you perfectly when you call for a new generation of politicians. But definitely, the current government of Ukraine cannot. I was not surprised that they refused to sign association agreement, because they were not able to sign to take this engagement.
So, Iryna Shevchenko, what do you think then of the coverage we give in the West to the imprisonment of another leading opposition leader, Yulia Tymoshenko, the former prime minister? She is in jail, convicted of corruption by the current government. What do you think of the coverage we give to that here?
Well, here definitely I will not support the fact that Yulia Tymoshenko is in jail, because definitely here is the point. It was kind of the decision, personal decision, a wish of Mr. President. Maybe I should stop to call him president. Of Yanukovych. It was his personal wish to kind of, to move the person who would take his place. And she would take. She could do it. But talking about Yulia Tymoshenko as a good future for Ukraine, well, I call all the world to remember who is Yulia Tymoshenko. This is not new politician. This is a politician who is existing in Ukrainian political reality for a long time, and she was part of the team of Kuchma and those people that we as Ukrainians don't wish to come back.
So she shouldn't be in jail, but she's not a saint.
Well, she's not the person definitely who would save Ukraine for sure.
It was in fact President Kuchma who was the first person to put her in prison when she was Deputy Prime Minister, even if she didn't stay in for very long. I think to go back to Klitschko a little bit, I agree with my Georgian colleague that he's improved greatly, and he's surrounded by some very good people. He's picked up along the way some very impressive people. He's picked up a former head of the Ukrainian security services and a former diplomat who's one of his main advisors.
So he's learning. He's not boxing above his weight category.
He's not boxing above his weight. And when there are fights in Parliament, it has to be said, he stays out of them.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true. But let me just a small remark. I don't want to look like I'm against everyone. But what I'm trying to make a point about that, what we are really worrying about, that this revolution would not turn again, as I said, with the scenario of Arab Spring, when new disappointment will come. That this is why we are talking about Klitschko as a good oppositioner right now. I would never deny that. He is good. He's playing a good role. But to be a president, this is a big question.
All right. Thorniké GORDADZE's Georgia is only one of two nations that signed on last Friday to a new treaty between the EU and the East in Vilnius. On Monday, Vladimir Putin visited Armenia, which back in September abandoned a deal with the EU in favor of a Russia-led customs union. Yerevan rewarded, by the way, with a sizable cut in the price it pays for natural gas, something the Ukrainians haven't gotten yet. The Russian president, who had some choice words for the protesters in Kiev and elsewhere.
The events in Ukraine remind me more of pogroms than revolution. It may seem strange, but in my opinion, this has little to do with relations between Ukraine and the European Union.
Little to do with relations between Ukraine and the European Union. We can surmise it's an electoral plot?
Of course, it's the Russian government always tries to depict the situation with the in the countries surrounding it, even in Russia when pro-democracy rallies take place as a plot, an external plot. And Mr. Putin and his government are really afraid of something. If they are really afraid of something, it's this kind of massive rallies against his government that can happen in the future. But coming back to the Georgia and Armenia example, Georgia has initialed association agreement and deep and comprehensive free trade agreement together with Moldova. This is something very positive, but it's still early to celebrate, because between the initialization and signature, we will have almost 1 year, and Russia will try to increase its pressure on Georgia and Moldova. Especially, Russia has a tremendous possibility to increase pressure on Georgia with occupied territories. And maybe last point, the difference between Ukraine and Georgia is that Georgia was ready to face Russian pressure, because for 9 years since the Rose Revolution, this country tried to orient its foreign policy plus economy plus internal policies towards European standards. And this country is much less vulnerable, except the two occupied territories. It depends much less on Russia. That's the main achievement of this government, and European path seems much less, much more irreversible in Georgia and also in Moldova than in Ukraine.
Iryna, SKLIAR, just getting back to what Putin said, when you hear him talk about it's more a pogrom than a revolution, what's your reaction?
Well, I would say that from what we see from Kiev, definitely it started from peaceful manifestation, continued to be peaceful manifestation. That crackdown which happened definitely was provoked. The question is by whom and for what reason, with which reason. So was Russia behind it? Was some opposition forces behind it? Was the governmental forces behind it? It's still to be investigated. So I think it's too early to speak, but I think Russia should not have the last word in this.
Were there agents provocateurs on Saturday, Julian?
Well, you can take conspiracy theories and you can spend the rest of your life developing them and proving whatever you want to prove. It seems to me that these were police officers of Berkut, which is a very highly trained anti-terrorist, anti-riot force. They knew what they were doing. Seems to me very unlikely somebody was able to give them orders who was not one of their direct commanders.
And to the point of, because we were thinking this right after the announcement came on November 21st, Putin's got the last laugh here. Do you think Putin has got the last laugh?
Well,
he still has that carrot he can dangle in front of the Ukrainians, most notably on lowering the price of natural gas, which is so important.
Of course it's important, but I mean, we don't know when the last laugh will be. I think it's very difficult. He can't have an unstable country on his southern border. Either there has to be a serious crackdown in Ukraine, or the Ukrainians have to get what they want, which is a somewhat more relaxed regime than the one they have at the moment. And there's certainly those who want a more relaxed regime are very, very wary of closer ties with Russia. It's difficult to see how, in the current atmosphere, Yanukovych can really ratchet up his ties with Russia.
So you don't see the signing, for instance, of a customs union with Russia?
It's as dangerous as cutting off negotiations with the EU. It could be another flashpoint.
Iryna, SKLIAR, do you agree that there'll be no customs union with Moscow? Because we had a guest last week from Moscow who said, if you don't sign that customs union, we're not going to lower the price on your natural gas.
Well, it's a question of negotiations, basically. I really expect that we will have some good news from Russia, because Russia is also losing gas market in Ukraine. Ukraine has reduced, if I'm not mistaken, from 50-something billion cubic meters of Russian gas consumption to 17 or something like this. So it's a huge gas market which they are losing, and they are losing due to their behavior, to that prices they are putting in Ukraine, and due to the pressure they're putting in Ukraine. So on the customs union, I don't really think it's possible. One thing is because it will definitely stop European integration of Ukraine, and this is something neither the government nor the president can really want, especially after the events now in Maidan, in Bankova and Europейska Square. We all saw this. And I think the president, also the business structure who stand besides him, really aware that there is nothing good for them waiting in the customs union. There is no structure of the organization. There are no clear accession conditions to it. So I don't think that Ukraine can seriously one day join the customs union. The rhetorics, well, they continue just like bilateral negotiations between Russia and Ukraine on gas, on trade issues. But I don't really think that customs union could be a serious question. I mean, entering the customs union, no.
We're out of time, but Iryna Shevchenko, just very, very briefly, at the end of the day, can Kiev be friends with both Moscow and the West?
Well, you know, to be friends and to have to work together and to be part of one of the union is completely different things, right? So or it will happen in 2 weeks, it will happen in 2 years or 5 years, Ukraine will be a rightful member of European Union. I'm not a minister, at least for now, maybe in the future.
There's a prediction.
I'm not a journalist with a long experience, but I'm a protester. I'm one of
that's your gut
Ukrainian
feeling.
new generation. I'm a dreamer, and this is how we're making changes. We are dreaming about new country. We're believing that we can make it, and we do it.
Iryna Shevchenko, I want to thank you. I want to thank Iryna SKLIAR for joining us from Brussels, Julian, NUNDY, and Thorniké, GORDADZE. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.